Welcome to World Finance Brief. We've got a real head-scratcher for you today. How does a massive Popeyes franchisee, we're talking over 100 locations, go bankrupt when everyone's buying more fried chicken than ever? It just doesn't seem to add up, right? Well, today, we're going to dig into the shocking collapse of this operator to understand what went wrong and what it might mean for the entire fast food industry. Let's get into it.
Okay, so what kind of number are we talking about here? What does it take to sink a giant with 130 Popeyes restaurants? Well, get ready for this. $130 million. That's the staggering mountain of debt that forced the company, Sailormen Inc., to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. You know, that's basically them hitting the emergency button to try and reorganize and just survive.
But hold on, because this is where the plot really thickens. You'd probably think, with that kind of debt, the business must have been tanking, right? Wrong. And that's what makes this whole situation so bizarre. It's a total paradox.
I mean, just look at the numbers for yourself. The fast food industry as a whole, yeah, customer traffic slipped a tiny bit, down 1% last year. But chicken chains specifically, they were on fire. Traffic was actually up 3%. So people were literally buying more fried chicken, not less, which makes Sailormen's failure even more puzzling.
So this is the big question, isn't it? If people are lining up to buy your product, how in the world do you end up with $130 million in debt and a bankruptcy filing? Well, the answer isn't just one single thing. Turns out it was a whole cascade of problems.
All right, so let's break down this recipe for failure. It's a cautionary tale, really, about what happens when you mix a ton of debt with rising costs and a dash of really, really bad luck, all at the worst possible time.
You know, it really was the perfect storm. First, you've got that massive debt just hanging over their heads, constantly squeezing them. Then, inflation hits, and suddenly everything, from the chicken itself to paying their employees, costs way more. But the real tipping point? They had a deal to sell 16 of their restaurants, which would have been a huge financial lifeline. And it fell through. After that, it was just a domino effect, with a flood of lawsuits from vendors, landlords, and eventually, their own bank.
And this timeline, man, it just shows how fast it all fell apart. That failed sale in 2023 was the beginning of the end. All through 2024 and 2025, the lawsuits just kept coming. By December, their main lender was suing them. And just 1 month later, boom, January 15th, they had no other move. They had to file for Chapter 11.
Okay, so you've got one of your biggest players going down. What does Popeyes corporate have to say about all this? Well, their story is pretty straightforward. This is an isolated incident. This isn't about us.
And here's the quote, straight from the president of Popeyes for the US and Canada. He sent a note to all the other franchisees basically saying, hey, what happened to Sailormen, that does not reflect how well your restaurants are doing. He's drawing a clear line saying this was a them problem, not a Popeyes problem. His whole argument is that this one company just had way more debt than is typical.
So you've really got these two totally different stories, right? On one side, you have Sailormen saying, look, it was the pandemic, it was inflation, it was labor costs, all this stuff we couldn't control. And on the other side, you have Popeyes corporate saying, nope, this is a one-off, an anomaly. They just borrowed way too much money.
But before we just take their word for it that this is an isolated incident, there's some other stuff we need to know. The Popeyes brand itself has been hitting some bumps. Their sales were actually down for 3 quarters in a row in 2025. And what happens when sales are down? You see a big leadership shakeup. They brought in a new president and a new chief marketing officer to try and hit the reset button. So things haven't exactly been perfect at headquarters either.
And that brings us to the really big question here. What does all of this mean for the future? Is this just a Popeyes story, or are we seeing a ripple effect across the entire fast food world?
So we have to ask again, is this really an isolated incident? Because when you start looking around the industry, you might just start to see a bit of a pattern emerging.
For example, it's not just Sailormen. A franchisee for another chain, Southern Classic Chicken, filed for bankruptcy in November, and an operator of Harold's Chicken locations did the same back in July. Now, sure, these are smaller cases, but it shows that Sailormen isn't totally alone in these struggles. It's a troubling trend.
So when you put it all together, what do you have? It's a huge debate, really. We've looked at the numbers, we've heard from corporate, and we've seen what's happening elsewhere. Now, it's time to decide what you think. And this is the question I want to leave you with. Is this whole thing just a story about one company that got in over its head with debt? A simple misstep? Or
Is this a massive warning sign, a real canary in the coal mine for the entire fast food franchise model, showing that things are getting way too tough out there?
Honestly, there's no easy answer here, and that's what makes it so interesting. So what's your take? One company's mistake or a system-wide problem? Let us know your valuable opinion down in the comments. We're really curious to hear what you think.
And hey, if you enjoy breaking down these big financial stories and getting straight to the point, make sure you subscribe to World Finance Brief. We cut through the noise so you don't have to. Thanks so much for watching.